Hey guys, it's Ator. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to ask you something. What's your story? We all have one, and sometimes it takes the right space and a little guidance to bring that story to life. That's why I created the Ink and Authenticity Men's Creative Writing Workshop. It's a unique space for men to explore their identities, reflect on personal experiences, and use writing as a tool for self-discovery. Whether you're an experienced writer or have never written a word, this workshop is for you. Join me and other like-minded men on this journey. Visit AuthenticityRoad.online/workshop to learn more. Thanks. And now on to today's episode. Some guys discover the world of men's work, try it out, and discover it's not for them. Perhaps they're not ready to dig in, or the work simply doesn't resonate for them. Others engage in the work and are forever changed. They embark on a journey of discovery, take that back to their lives, and live the better versions of themselves. They benefit their spouses and partners, their children, and their communities. They make strides towards achieving the growth they've been seeking. There's a third group of men, however, who begin doing the work and recognize that this will be their lifelong mission or legacy. They get called to a life of service, of bringing this approach to emotional healing to every man they meet. That's what happened to me. The work changed me deeply, and I resonated with its power so greatly that it became my ministry to bring this work forward to help men heal their deepest wounds. My guests today fit into that last category. These are men who found the work and recognized that they are called to pay it forward. In this episode, I welcome the founders of Authentec Men, Philip Gaynor, Dan Klein, and Tom Sigathy. Through their work, they are creating a community in which men can achieve their best selves while recognizing that no man has to do it alone. We think you'll enjoy hearing what they have to say about their journeys, the work, and how their new community can foster connection and healing. So let's get on the road. Welcome to the Authenticity Road podcast.
We started this podcast to share our stories and hear from others about their adventures in men's work.
Join us on the journey to our fully authentic selves, emotional healing, and the meaning of modern masculinity.
Here on Authenticity Road.
Hello, and welcome to the Authenticity Road podcast. I am Ator, and this week on the show, I am thrilled and delighted to have three gentlemen, two of whom I know really well, one of whom I know less well, but is also dear. I have Dan Klein, Philip Gaynor, and Tom Sigathy. Did I say that right, Tom?
You did.
Excellent. And I said their names in that order because that's the order in which they appear on my screen, not because of order of importance. Philip and Dan, I have known for quite some time and are two of the closest people to me in my world. They are two of my 4 a.m. emergency phone calls. Tom, I have only just met through Dan and Philip, but from what I have seen so far, he is also a real special man, and I am eager to get to know him better. The reason that Dan and Tom and Philip are with me today are because they have just formed a new company called Authentec Men. And Authentec Men is an organization. Well, I will let them go into what their organization does, but let's just say that we met in the world of men's work, and Authentec Men is aligned with helping men be the best versions of themselves, and they will tell us more about that. So guys, welcome to the show. Really glad you're here. For the sake of order or orderliness, I am going to throw it to Philip first because his last name begins first in the alphabet. So Philip, welcome to the show. What would you like our listeners to know about you?
Well, first of all, you're giving it to me because, of course, I'm the most important.
Of course you are.
Okay. Well, I found men's work about almost 2 years ago now. And Ator was one of the first people I met. Actually, he reached out to me when I joined a platform, and I joined a number of platforms just to explore it. And I landed in this kind of bizarre organization and signed up and went on. This is after a life of very aggressive business and building businesses. I've never done anything like this before, and all my male relationships were transactional. And I thought, well, this will be different and a fun journey to go on. So I went to this retreat with 54 people. I never met any of these guys before, and probably had the most transformational experience of my life. And discovered over time that men's work was really a calling, and it kind of opened me up to what was possible, and certainly opened my emotions up to what was possible, and really start feeling things. So I won't go into I guess I shouldn't go into our actual journey now, but that's a little. So anyway, my goal and my focus now, I've been through a lot, and we've been through creative journeys, and I have kind of found my sweet spot of what I'm going to focus on, because we each have unique focuses, and that is working with people that suffering loss, whether it's divorce, separation, end of life, adoption, and my goal is to serve people and just live a purposeful life. So
Beautiful.
That's me.
Thanks, Philip. Next, I'm going to toss it over to Dan Klein.
Thanks, Sator. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us to speak, have this conversation with you. So my journey into men's work happened because I was at the bottom. I was at the lowest of low. Like, I had hit complete rock bottom after decades of thinking that I had everything that I ever needed. On the outside, I had all of the trappings. I had a great job. I had a great place to live. I had a relationship that I thought was healthy. And, add on to that, living in a beautiful condo in Miami Beach and driving a fancy car and, all the materialistic things that people tell us that we need. Society tells us, culture tells us that we need in order to be happy. And within the span of a few weeks, I had lost it all. So I had realized that I had been living a lie for many years and decided to finally come clean because it was destroying me inside. When I did that, my ex-wife left me, and I lost my job and decided that I needed something new. I needed support. So I took a risk. I said, I have nothing else to lose. Let me show up and be my most vulnerable self that I can be. And that was my entryway into men's work. And it's been a completely transformative journey for me, where I've discovered who I am, and found people who not only accept me for who I am, but love me and celebrate me for that version of myself. And because of the service that was given to me by these men throughout my journey, I realized that I wanted to turn around and give that experience to other men who might be facing challenges or who might be feeling alone. And my goal really is to help every man that I possibly can who's called to this kind of work, to this kind of support, to this kind of growth and development, discover their authentic selves, including what their purpose is that's bigger than just getting a paycheck, and helping them and nurturing them on their journey, and just being there, being a safe place for them to come to and be real. Beautiful.
Thanks, Dan. And next I'm going to toss it over to Tom Sigathy.
Hi, thanks, Tora. What brought me into men's work? I think it was a lifelong journey to get here. First part of my career was social work and working with abused and neglected families. And then the second part of my career, last 20 years, 25 years now, has been in higher education and working with the typical college age population. And what I have found in both of those careers, both of those jobs, is this level of lack of identity, for lack of a better way to put it, with a lot of men that I've worked with. and lack of mentors in our culture. We have some through coaches and advisors, and a lot of people have those titles, but they don't necessarily guide other men because they're so independently focused on everything. For myself, what got me into the retreats and the classes and things that Philip and Dan are describing was becoming burnt out for what I would say is the first time in my life a year ago, and really, really burned out. I mean, I've had times in my jobs where I didn't like jobs before, and I've gone through crisis before, but this burnout was very, very different. To the point that I really could care less. I told my boss at one point that I could care less if I just turned around and walked out the door and never came back, and just deal with whatever the fallout would be. I started looking into all the men's work, thinking this will just be a way to learn more about some emotional intelligence, to add another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, when you do service and working with people. And I found a community. I found a community of men initially who were feeling and thinking similar to what I was when we were in that first opening meeting, and people were saying they're not even comfortable around men. They don't want to be here. They don't want to be in this circle, even though we all voluntarily signed up to come to this workshop.
Right.
And it was just very genuine and authentic in the way people were relating and interacting, and seeing that all these issues that I've dealt with throughout my career of problematic behavior, culturally, everything else, how much of it hits men, and men never get any kind of support or assistance with any of it.
Yeah.
We're kind of left to be out there alone and deal with it and just absorb the pain and then present to society how we're just doing great.
Yeah.
And then crumbling on the inside.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Tom. So, folks, those are our players today. And the reason, as I teased earlier, they are all in the room with me today is because they have created Authentc Men. And I'm just going to throw it wide open now, and whoever wants to jump in can. Somebody tell me, what is Authentc Men?
So, from my perspective, Authentc Men is an organization. It's a place for guys to come where they want to learn and grow primarily, but do it alongside other men. And we offer courses, we offer workshops, retreats, community groups, and also individual coaching. And that's really one big focus of our business, of our organization, is creating a community of like-minded and, more importantly, like-hearted men who are here to connect with each other and connect with themselves more deeply. We just provide the infrastructure and the tools for them to be able to do that more effectively. And then the other side of our business, which is really exciting, it's all really exciting, but this is really exciting me, is we're working with organizations. So universities, we're working with police departments, we're working with corporations on providing trainings to men and women around the topics of healthy masculinity, emotional intelligence, and other things, to really help shift a lot of the conversations and stereotypical behaviors that sometimes present themselves or get labeled as toxic masculinity. We're really doing our part to offer solutions to organizations to make those shifts. And that's my version of what we're doing.
Yeah. Who else?
Well, I think I think that was perfect. I mean, that's the details of the kind of in the weeds of what we're doing. In my mind, community is the biggest point of it. It's a safe space. We're inclusive and welcoming, and our goal is to build a community. And whether it's on a big scale corporately or it's on a small scale, we do a lot of free events. We do. The goal of it is just to really support, and as Dan said, or open up and show what's possible. If with trust and confidentiality and relationship, that we're all here to hold each other. So it's not about, it's the three of us or the four of us at Tor. But it's really, it's what people can do for each other. When we work with men, and I certainly have experienced this so many times when I'm working with somebody, and they're opening up and having their experience, I feel so deeply moved by the work and other people's work. And I think we all learn and we share together. So it really it's community building and community experience. So it's not about an individual by any means.
Right. Tom, what'd they leave out?
I think Philip and Dan did a great description. The one thing I think that I would add is it's in a lot of ways, it's eliminating competition from the relationship of men. I think that's where we all tend to feel comfortable and land in our culture in general. Who's top dog, who's on top of the pyramid, who makes the most, who's the most successful, who's got the prettiest wife or the happiest family or whatever the thing is. If we took competition out, what is the relationship between men? And I do think my own philosophy with this is that a lot of it is coming to terms with being vulnerable, which I know sounds kind of squishy on a podcast like this when you don't even meet the men that are listening to this. But when I've really assessed and looked at how do we build relationships in general, we've got to learn how to be vulnerable and real. If I can express an emotion I'm going through, then you guys can or you can choose to identify with the emotion I'm talking about. Maybe not the event that gave me that emotion, but you can relate to the emotion. And once we've done that, we can connect and build a relationship and a friendship. And I don't think men are taught that. And there's been so much language in the last half dozen years about toxic masculinity that Dan mentioned before. I've done a lot of work with college students, and when I bring up the concept of healthy masculinity, it's amazing how many of them will say, I've never contemplated that concept before. And to me, that's the men's culture in our nation, in the world, whatever way you want to put it, failing each other. Why are we not talking to young men about what is healthy masculinity? What does it mean to be a man in a way that you're still caring for people? You still provide what you need to provide, but you're able to be genuine, real, and vulnerable and show up in a relationship.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's Ator again. Sorry to interrupt the show, but I want to tell you about something I'm really excited about. If you've been listening for a while, you know how important it is to take time for self-reflection and growth. That's exactly why I've created the Ink and Authenticity Men's Creative Writing Workshop. This is a 6-session online workshop designed specifically for men. Whether you're looking to explore your identity, challenge societal expectations, or simply find a creative outlet to process your life, this workshop gives you the space to do that. It's not about being a professional writer. It's about telling your story, digging deep, and connecting with others on the same journey. Each session is filled with prompts and discussions that will help you understand yourself better, all in a supportive and open environment. So if you want a way to write, reflect, and share, join me for Ink and Authenticity. Just visit authenticityroad.online/workshop to learn more and register. Now let's get back to the show. There is a school of thought, which I have heard on occasion, that all masculinity is toxic. That just by virtue of using the term masculinity, that is inherently toxic, because those traits that we associate with masculinity, fill in the blank, are the hard traits, and the traits that we associate with femininity are the soft traits. For those of you who didn't hear it, Philip's dog is attacking, I think.
He's being toxic.
He's being toxic.
It's toxic masculinity.
Toxic canininity. But that really, if you look at it, the traits that we associate, the good traits that we associate with being masculine, are just good traits. So providing for my family, protecting the people I love, whatever trait you can think of that is associated with masculinity, traditional masculinity, but is not negative, is really just a human trait.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, when we start applying terms like masculine and feminine, that is inherently toxic. And I'm curious how you would respond to that.
I think there's a lot of room for balance in all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a reason that you do have the two ends for masculine and feminine. It's like the bass and the treble. If all you play is treble, you're going to get a headache. If all you play is bass, you get a headache. You put the both together, you make a concert, you make music. I think it's very similar. Feminine and masculine does not have to be gender oriented. Plenty of people that are men or male identifying can be very feminine, and vice versa. Plenty of women can be very masculine. But I do think, like you're talking about classic standards that we might put out there about masculinity, providing for, maybe being supportive, being the solid person someone can lean on, being willing to stay present even when it's difficult, and knowing that you're there for a purpose. I can name any of my own struggles I've gone through. I went through a divorce. I've got 4 kids. I had sole custody through their teenage years. There's a lot of struggle in all of that. There was a lot of pain in all of that for every single member of the family. And how do you stay present in it? Make amends maybe for the pain you may have given in that scenario, but still show up to support them and theirs. Knowing that it's really a sacrifice. It might not be in every moment what I want to do, but I know I need to hold up to my obligations to these people in my life. I think the toxicity takes over the conversation. If I shove my belief system down someone else's throat, or I insist they do it my way, that's going to be toxic. But there can be a balance to a benefit on the other side of, how do I still remain constant? How do I remain supportive? How do I not necessarily put myself first, but I'm the first one to stand behind someone else?
When you said the word toxic, it just, something came to mind, and I got like a Gabor Mate flash of talking when he talks about addiction, and to him, addiction is not a bad thing. It's actually a form of survival. And when you were talking about toxic, when you were just saying that, Tom, it reminded me when I think about my own journey, and I've had 4 children, been through divorce, and really had like a struggle, and also am adopted and grew up with a family that I couldn't relate to. A lot of this toxicity, there's expectations of us as men. And to me, for me, I think my toxicity was more about my survival choices. Like, how do I make it through each day? How do I show up as a dad? How do I pay for everything that's going on for my family? And of course, that's the expectation that is of me. And, what is the mirror that I'm working from, that who set the example for me to come up with these things? And I think most of us don't have those clean examples of the perfect father image that was supportive and loving and vulnerable and open to us and raised us that way. Because otherwise we'd all be perfect. But when I've discussed this with other men, it seems like nobody has that positive journey. Everybody, they kind of are struggling to, what does it mean to them? So I think that's a lot for me. The toxicity is really about that, because I was toxic with myself.
And so the reason that I brought that up, and Philip, you kind of touched along the edges of it, is how does what you're doing, how does the work that you're doing in Authentic Men help men get past this, help men discover the pieces of their masculinity that are beneficial and not toxic? And you actually, Tom, in your introduction all the way at the beginning, you had mentioned something about how men, and I don't remember how you put it at the time, but men aren't really given the tools to deal with their emotions, which is part of the root of what we think of as toxic manhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious how the work that you guys are doing with this new organization is helping guys through this.
So first, I think it's a fascinating discussion that we're having right now. And I don't know if this is going to answer your question directly, Ettore. But what came up for me just now is that for me, I had no idea that what I was doing was considered toxic, right? Like I didn't label anything. I was just going through life doing, acting, almost unconsciously, surviving, to use Philip's terminology or Gabor Mate's terminology. You know, can't give Philip too much credit. Just kidding,
And that's okay.
Philip. Just kidding, man. I was doing the best I could with the tools and the resources that I had, which clearly to me now were not a lot. The way that we are approaching this is really guiding men through community, through other men who are on similar journeys, might be further along, might be further behind, but I believe fundamentally we can learn something from everybody that we interact with as long as we agree to play by the same set of rules. Like, if I can be in community and sit in a class, a workshop, a group, a one-on-one conversation with somebody who I know is there without judgment and is challenging me on things that might have been leading me down a darker path or a path that I don't like because I've been unconscious, it allows those things to come to light, right? And that's hard, just identifying those things, really facing them. By doing so, we're not prescribing like, hey, here's the checklist of all the qualities that you need to become a healthy man. Like, that's not it at all. The reason that we're named Authentic Men is because we're helping men discover what masculinity means to them. You know, we have no horse in the race. We have no ideology or dogma to say this is what you need to believe or this is how you need to act in order to be an authentic man or an authentic man. It's really just about, hey, let's work together to discover what that means for each of us. And if it's different, cool. But there's going to be some overlap. And helping men bring those things that might be unconscious, those survival patterns, those survival mechanisms to light, and then challenge those assumptions in healthy ways and maybe try on something new. Teach them how to connect vulnerably. Maybe we're doing our part to have them make a 1% difference. Because if you course correct by 1%, by the end, that's a huge difference, right? If you're correcting by 1% now, 10 years down the road, that's a big difference from where you were heading. So that's my perspective on that.
Yeah. I want to talk about the organization for just a minute. So the three of you sit down and decide, we're going to work together. We need to call ourselves something. Why Authentic Men?
I think the goal always is to discover each person's authenticity and what it means to them. And that's was really the conversation. You know, what do we want to represent? What do we care about?
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you, Philip. I mean, for me, it's this really cool question, an answer of like, where are we? What do we want to be known as? Just to ourselves, not even to the outside world. Like, do we want to be authentic? Do we want to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, I'm authentically me? That's kind of where it started. It's like, okay, yeah, we want to be authentic. Cool. We are well on this, like we're down this path and we're discovering new things about ourselves every day as we sit together. And if we can create something where other men can come and join us, like we're not sitting there saying, hey, we have all the answers, we're going to tell you guys how to do this. We're actually sitting in community and in groups and doing our own work alongside our community members. Like we're community members just as much as we're, founders or leaders of the community, but happiness for me, has come from discovering my authentic self. And if we can do a part and shine a light and be a beacon for other men to say, hey, I want to be authentic too. I might not know what that means. That's where it came from. And we chose purposely to remove the I from authentic because we really wanted to be about community and not about the individual or have any ego involved in it at all.
A big piece that we see in culture coming through from men is that we're expected to behave in certain ways. We're expected to do certain things, and we're expected to stuff an enormous amount of emotions and pretend that we don't have them. Except for anger, because that tends to be one that's very acceptable. And so for me, the authentic piece really is if I don't, quote unquote, behave the way everything and everybody keeps telling me to behave, and I behave in a way that's true to who I am, that's my authentic self. And how do I get there with no apologies? I identify as a gay man. I came out late in life. One of the reasons that I divorced clearly didn't work very well in a heterosexual marriage when you're gay. But there's a big chunk of that. I've often said and talked about how much gay people understand that coming out process, but do straight people really understand what it means? Because what it really is hiding a virtue, an element of who you are to present differently to the world. Mm-hmm. Because if I present differently, then people will accept me. If I present authentically who I am, will they accept me or not? And that's the fear. That's why it's seen as such a huge thing in our community. And yet, effectively, straight men don't get a chance to do that coming out experience. And there's often areas where you need to really say, this is who I am, like it or not. And if you don't, fine, then I'll just walk over here to the people that like me. I can build relationships with people who want to be genuine and authentic.
Right. And if my experience is an indication for anybody else, the more authentic I became, the more people liked me. The fake version of me, which was highly successful and worked for me, also had a fair share of detractors and enemies and people who thought I was an asshole. And I have to say that over the past few years, as I've become more and more my authentic self, without apologies, I have fewer and fewer detractors. And I seem to become a more attractive person to other people.
Yeah, and I think the biggest shocker for me was when I'm not living an authentic life. No matter how many times someone else tells me they love me, I never feel loved because I know I'm not being genuine and authentic. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is they're loving is not truly me.
Right.
So I can feel isolated and alone even in loving relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're not loving the real me, then what are you loving?
Right.
So authentic men, not authentic people or authentic humans. We're focusing on men here. Even though, Tom, I believe in your private practice, you work with people of all genders, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And
Philip, I think that's the same for you in your death work.
Yes, I will be. Yeah.
Dan, I'm not so sure about you. You do. Okay.
Yeah, I work with women too.
So outside of this, you all work with women, but inside of this, the focus is on men. And I think we've touched on some of that, but I would love to hear it sort of encapsulated. Put a nice bow on it. Why guys? Why men?
Well, I just want to, I'll jump in because this was a really new experience for me. And I found, and I don't know, in my reading, and I don't even remember, I actually think it was No More Mr. Nice Guy. I was listening to that, and he was talking about relationships and the difference between men having relationships with men and men having relationships with women. First of all, women are more emotionally in touch. But beyond that, very often for myself, I'm a straight man, when I am engaging with women and I have my business life for many years, there is a element of sexuality involved, and it just happens. I'm working with an attractive woman. There's always some kind of inherent flirtatiousness going on, and it may not be overt, but it's there. And when I'm dealing with men, that whole piece is taken out, and it's really, we can work on emotions, we can work on, whatever struggles I'm having, they're having, and you can really, it's just a very different experience. And also with women, you don't, traditionally, I didn't want to show my vulnerability. I was just hard, I was tough. I could handle any situation. And I do want to say, though, because as we were talking about being soft and everything, I find that all of this vulnerability and openness and showing up for people can be done with strength. So it's not like it's not just all feminine energy, but it's quite a mixture. And I feel like I'm at just the beginning, even though I've been doing this for a while, because I have this, as I discover new things, I realize that the onion is not peeled back. And each time I peel and find another layer, and I deal with something, it's like, oh, but what about that? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, and it's quite it's an amazing experience.
But now I feel compelled to toss this back to Tom and say, all right, Tom, so now Philip has opened the door to say it's easier to do this work when there's no sexual tension in the room. Yes. And as a gay identified man, mm-hmm. Where does that leave you?
Well, being professional. I think it's interesting because when we throw out words like intimacy or sexual tension, and I think everybody always thinks of the physical act of sexual energy. And mm-hmm. I think intimacy in general can also, it's into me see. Like, can you allow someone else to see you? There's a American Indian tribe that used to see gay men as two-spirited, and they would call them two-spirited, that they were the equal balance between feminine and masculine energy and understood both. There's an energy level for men, I think, where we all tend to try to hide our vulnerable side in general. And how do we actually show that? How do we show compassion? How do we develop self-compassion so that we can have compassion for other people? Everybody gets physically attracted to someone at some point, and we can work with people professionally. And I think we all have boundaries where, we can be in public with our clothes on and not having sex just because we see someone we might be attracted to. Except for Philip there, who's shaking his head. But most people can do that. I think there's so many more layers. There's also people who are kind of working in their own cohort of identities. You have gay men working with gay men. It doesn't mean that they're all going to sleep together. But it's working on what is their life experience that got them to accept who they are now. How do they get to that place? How do they emotionally lean on their own kind of network of friends so that 100% of that burden of emotional support doesn't just fall to your partner? And that doesn't matter what your orientation is. I think if we put 100% of our emotional needs on one individual, it's too much weight for that person to carry. When I have described this business to people, to women in general, almost every single one of them leaves the conversation saying, my husband, my boyfriend, my son, my brother, they need to be in this. They need to go. The women see it right away because they recognize how much they're holding up. And the men will say, yeah, I could probably use that. I'd like to do that, but they're hesitant at jumping in. Often, not always, but often. So it's trying to provide this safe space that people can feel comfortable, they can be themselves. There's no agenda, there's no hidden agenda. To really understand, how do you develop that support network around yourself?
Yeah. So, Dan, I'm going to toss it to you, and with the question, why should I become a member? Why should I join your platform? What do I get when I sign up?
I'd like to circle back to the question, why men first, if that's
Oh,
okay,
okay.
with you. And then I'll,
Yeah, sure.
and then I'll answer that, because I do think it lends itself, it provides more context. So men, I mean, we get told that we're running the world in many situations, right? It's, especially as a white man, a young, straight white man, I have all the advantages, right? That's what I'm told. With men, things are supposed to be easier, yet what we see through the numbers is that men are committing suicide at a 75 to 80% increase compared to women. Men are reporting increased moments of feeling severe mental health, including depression and anxiety, suicidal ideation. Only half of them go reported, and out of that half, they feel like they would only seek support if they were actually going to commit suicide. So there's a huge population of men who, while we have all the advantages in society, men are struggling. And we don't have places to go to really open up. And not just vent. Yes, that's a fundamental part, right? I think we need to let go of a lot of stuff at first before we get to the underlying, really root cause, core, identifying who we really are and who we want to be, and starting to take action and steps towards becoming that way, living that way. So the reason why men is because men are suffering. There aren't enough organizations. There aren't enough collective places for men to come and learn and grow alongside one another and get that mentorship and brotherhood that they might be needing in their lives. And most of the time it's because men don't even realize that they need that. I mean, yeah, cool. I've got my guy friends. I'm talking about sports and I'm drinking some beers and hey, we're going to go hit on these people, men or women, right? Doesn't matter. We're going to go, yeah. Okay, cool. We bonded. Now let me go back home and God damn, I'm miserable. Shit. What's going on here? Why am I not happy? I'm doing all the right things. Well, you're not being seen, right? Because we do have to present ourselves, or it's being told, or we're learning that we have to present ourselves, that we can't be vulnerable around one another. Tom mentioned it before. It's a lot of competition, or we have to be the providers and protectors. So God forbid we open up to our family members. Hey, I know I'm supposed to provide and protect for you right now, but I'm feeling really shitty. I can't. I need help. Where does your mind go? This person's going to leave me. I'm not a good father. I'm not a good husband. I'm not a good partner. I'm not a good brother. I'm not a good son. I'm not good. I'm a man. I'm also hearing from media, wow, look at what all these men are doing, all the sexual violence that's out there. I'm part of that group. I must be bad on some level. I've crossed a line with somebody in my past when I was younger. That must make me bad. I'm feeling guilty about that, but I can't open up about it because, look, I'm going to get vilified. So the reason we work with men is because we want to create a safe container for men to actually be honest and to be real. And for me, the only time that I was able to be real and honest and vulnerable was around other men. When I did it with my ex-wife, she confirmed everything that I was afraid that she would confirm. She rejected it. And that's okay. She had every right to. Like, I hold no grudges, no resentments. I completely understand and I empathize with that. And I'm grateful for it because it propelled me down this path. But it wasn't until I owned all of my stuff being witnessed by other men and was met not with rejection, but with true acceptance and love. Dare I say it, even love, unconditional love, that I actually started to heal. And I actually discovered what it is and who I am, but what it is I want to do with my gifts, my life, with my story, with the choices that I had made that might have hurt other people and myself. That's why, for me, I want to work with men, primarily, in this community. What do men get when they come to Authentc Men? Why become a member? I can list off all the benefits. Oh, you get, you have your courses and you have your groups and all this stuff. But really what you get is a place to come, be seen, to be loved, to be honored and protected. You get to form relationships on a deeper level with not only the members of the community, but you learn the skills to be able to take that into your life and build relationships of that level with everybody that you interact with. You have the opportunity to do that with everybody. And you get to actually live your life and be proud of it. And be happy and celebrate it. Because you're learning these skills and you're practicing this in this container. And yeah, we use somatic experiencing, we do narrative therapy, we have a bunch of different methodologies that we teach and that we use. But really, it's giving men, you have the opportunity to almost go back to being a kid and have fun and kind of scrape your knees a little bit and be picked up by your brothers when you fall down and be held and supported and celebrated when you win. And you get to cry and you get to laugh and you get to hug and you get to hold and you get to stand strong. And you get to do it alongside other people because you don't have to be alone.
Philip, Tom, anything to add?
No, I think that was really eloquent, and I think that
surprisingly,
it is shocking
considering the source. Yeah.
Well, I'm not wearing pants. I'm not wearing pants right now. I think that helps free the thoughts.
Well, we know where the thoughts are coming from. I think the thing that, I was reflecting on my experiences. I'm listening to Dan speak, and I think there are three things that really popped up for me. One of them, and I actually learned this from Dan, was showing up. It's like my primary thing now in life is showing up. Someone's in need, I show up. Someone needs help, I show up. I show up for people I care about, my family, and before I was always working. Now my priority is showing up, holding space for somebody, listening. And the biggest thing I think, and it certainly made a dramatic difference in my relationship with my wife, is empathy. Is my empathy before I had no patience for illness or failure or anything else. And with my family, if somebody wasn't feeling well, I was like, man up, get up, go, because I did. I tortured myself that way. And now I can be empathic in a way that I don't have to become someone else's emotions, but I can certainly hold space and respect and listen to them and really, intuitively I do experience it to a certain level, but I'm just processing it in a whole different way. And I learned that here. And that was a huge shift for me.
And even on I completely agree on both counts of what Philip and Dan said, but in showing up, I think a huge piece is learning how to show up for ourselves as well.
Yep.
Because we negate and neglect ourselves all the time. And I don't mean to be so self-centered that nobody else matters, but more, back to the kind of on the airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help the child next to you, because you're of no use if you pass out. And I think a lot of us work ourselves to the point of passing out. I think one of the reasons that disconnect is happening and all those negative descriptions Dan was giving to men in general, and people have discovered it after COVID. I think one thing COVID did for many, many, many men out there, myself included, was recognize how much I've been neglecting my own relationships and friendships and social life at the behest of work. That the work colleagues and relationships became that social life. And COVID removed that and opened everybody's eyes to say, oh, how many of these are real friendships? How many of these colleagues you have at work are people that you're going to share every single thing about your life with? Or is it performative because you want to get the next raise or the next promotion? And how do you start building that private life of social richness in order to feel like you are living a life rather than you're working your life away?
I totally agree with you, Tom. What popped up for me, I think about myself because I get up at 4:00 in the morning and I'm like flying already. So I get up, I run, but the change in my life has been slowing down. So I get up now and the first thing I do is meditate. And then I can really think about how do I want to proceed in this day. And I can clear my head and clear any shit that's flying around in there and really be very intentional about what I do and how I show up. So, and that's also brand new. I mean, with that meditation, that's kind of like for me, it's the key to everything and starting every day and ending my day at night when I go to bed. I meditate before I sleep. So, and that has been really wonderful because it slows my ADHD mind down so that I can actually, really, be intentional. That's mindful, intentional.
Recognize what's going on in the body. I started training and teaching on breath work years back, and even when I started, I thought, really? I'm going to get paid to teach people how to breathe? That kind of sounds ridiculous. But the more reading I've done on it and the more I've practiced it myself and recognizing how much we stash and store in our bodies and we don't let it out again. But we don't necessarily recognize the gift of body, that the body is picking up on all these emotions long before our brain puts a story to it. And like for myself, for a lot of my younger adulthood, I wrestled with back pain all the time because all the emotions got stored in the back, and I'd clench the muscles and I'd put my back out and I'd be in excruciating pain for it in my 30s. Until I started learning how to navigate all of that and feel the emotion and let it be released so that it doesn't lodge in the muscles and in the body and block everything up. It's just interesting to me there's so many people now, obviously working out daily and in the gym and doing all this exercise, but do they pay attention to their body other than that? Like, are we really understanding how much our body has to offer to our own sense of wellness and well-being?
Yeah. Dan, I saw
you.
Yeah, you looked like you had a pregnant look in your face.
Huh. I'm just gaining weight.
I set him up, and you knock him out of the park. That's the
deal. Phil mentioned that he learned about showing up for me, and I think that's fundamentally wrong. Just because I learned about showing up from him and from you, Ator, and from you, Tom, because you have all shown up for me. I mean, I'm getting emotional right now because I can think of very specific, real, raw, vulnerable moments in my life where I needed support, and you guys dropped everything and you were there. And so I've learned how to show up because you guys have shown up for me. And I show up for you, of course. Like that's really what the power of community and this work is. Because as we get to know each other and got to know each other first, I didn't know. I knew your names. Oh, cool. Yeah, I kind of know where you're from. Didn't really care where you guys were from. I wanted to know your name because it's easier to address you that way. But what I really got to know is who you are. Where are you at, right? Like, at your core, if we think of each other as onions, right? The typical idea of getting to know somebody is you peel the onion back outer layers first until eventually, maybe years from now, you get to the core and you find out who somebody really, really is. With you guys, it was the opposite. I got to know who you were at your core and be like, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse here, but I'm going to curse. Fuck.
Go for it.
Like, holy fuck. These are the realest motherfuckers that I've ever met in my life, and I want to be around them. I want them in my life. I want to be like them in so many respects. And then, I found out where you lived, and I found out if you were married, and what your relationship status was, and what you did for work. Like, all of that was secondary, which is like so counter to what we learn in society, right? What's the number one question that you get asked when you're meeting somebody new? Oh, hey, after your name, what do you do? Like, ugh, I hate that. I didn't experience that with you guys at all. And you guys showed up for yourselves and for me in those spaces that we connected with in initially. And that's what taught me how to show up for other people in my life. You guys taught me that. So, Philip, I respectfully disagree with you that you learned showing up for me. I think we're learning showing up from each other, and we're reinforcing it repetitively because we continue to show up for one another.
I guess that's the ethos of when you ask the question to what are we about? And I think that is our ethos. It's showing up, and it's also certainly not about an individual. It's about our community and our own and our community expansion, and and to see what's possible, and to experience that together, and to as we expand, we're sharing our journeys with other people and helping them. So I think it's all about giving and receiving and learning to give and receive, because I was never good at receiving. I can give and I first learned how to receive. Actually, somebody called me out on it at one of the retreats. It's like, can you receive? Can you take something back? And it's easier to hide that way. So, but it's a balance. It's like your yin and yang. To give and receive is an incredible experience. So, yeah.
When you first started doing this work, and I'll throw this question open to anybody. When you first started doing this work, what was the most surprising thing you discovered about yourself? So I'll give that some context. For me, it was how very, very angry I was. Because if you asked me if I was angry, I would say, oh, no, I'm never angry. I don't get angry. Anger is just one of those things I don't do. Until, to use your onion analogy, Dan, I started peeling away and discovered what was going on, what was bubbling underneath. And as they say about onions, you're going to peel a lot of layers and it's going to end with tears. And that's certainly true with me. So I think one of the things that I discovered that surprised me was the level of anger that I had. And also, I always knew that I felt things deeply, but I never knew the breadth of emotions. I knew the depth of emotions that I could experience, but I never knew the breadth of my emotional world. And so I think those were the two most surprising things that I discovered about myself when I started doing this work. And I'm curious if anybody else resonates with this and goes, oh, and has a light bulb moment here.
I am. Anger was an easy one for me because I was always angry. I'm from New York. I was always pissed off about something. And that was my go-to. And I, to this day, have no problem with confrontation because I think people are more honest and direct and tell you what they're thinking in confrontation. So that wasn't one for me. I think the part that got me was I can intellectualize what I might do, or I can tell the story of what I might do, and I can even understand when I miss the mark and I don't hit a goal. But to recognize how much I was holding on to of an expectation that no matter what the task, that I perform it really well. And to be able to acknowledge that there are some core things in my life that have occurred, as a parent even, where I missed the mark. And my entire 100% of my energy had a goal of landing the mark. And to be able to admit that in front of a group of men and then open your eyes and stare into one of their faces and recognize that they understand the same pain, that they get it because they are a dad or they are a son or because they've experienced the same thing. There's a validation there that it can't be received any other way. And I remember, because even saying the situation that I had said in that situation, the hard part was opening my eyes and looking at them, because I was waiting for the disgust and the shame that their look would give me. And it wasn't there. It was look of support and understanding and love that we've both gone through this male experience in life, that it just beats the crap out of us. And then where do we put that? You can't give it to your kids. You don't want to give it to your kids. They're too little. They're children. Who's going to hold that with you? Because that's really what it is, I think. It's building those relationships to be able to hold those elements of life. We all got taught, too long in this, but I think we all got taught this warped view of relationship through Disney. Find the soulmate. I mean, the amount of times I've heard that in my life. And I think in a lot of ways our soulmates are our male best friends. Not in a sexual way again, but, I had best man at my wedding. I was best man at his wedding. He was there when I got separated and then divorced. I was there for him when he got separated and divorced. We were both there for each other. We moved on to the next relationships. The friendship has lasted a lifetime. The ex-spouses, not in the picture anymore. So it's a different story, I think, that we're getting sold by culture than is the reality.
Yeah.
And Tor, can you repeat the question?
What was the most surprising thing you discovered other than poop on the floor? I'm guessing he's discovered poop on the floor.
It's his own.
No, I'm plugging in.
Okay. What was the most surprising thing you discovered when you first started doing this work about yourself?
The thing, when I went to that first retreat, since I've never walked into any place without being fully prepared to what I was going into, because it was always a business transaction,
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I was shocked myself that I even went. By myself, I drove up and went to this place with all these people. And I feel, as an adopted person and not really having connected relationships with my family, I always felt like I was a chameleon of sorts. So, and I was very successful at it, because every business transaction, I could go in and negotiate with anybody without fear and become whoever was needed to be there. So it was almost inherent in my behavior. And when I walked into this, it was because Tom said this before, I was waiting to hear someone say, "Oh, what do you do?" Because living in New York, when you get together with a group, with my wife and I, or with other people, and they're couples, and the men all get together, it's like, "Oh, what kind of car do you drive? Oh, what do you do? Where are you going on vacation?" It's all those stupid things that I hated to socialize, because I don't want to relate to people that way. So it was amazing, because I waited to see if anybody would say that. And one person actually did, but it was a person that, well, it doesn't even matter, but it was okay, because I saw that person for who they were. And it was like, that's how they were relating to people. And that's okay, because that was 1 out of 54 people.
Right.
And it was really shocking. And it enables you to just like open up and be, everything's okay. It's inclusive, it's loving, it's accepting. And just like what Tom said, you close your eyes and say something, you open them up and you expect to be punched in the face or just look like you're an asshole. And in fact, it was the opposite. And I remember an exercise we did where there were two circles, and we would stop and be right up against another person and face to face with another man, and you'd have to tell them what you didn't like about them. And then you go to the next person, and the person says it back, and inevitably it was something you didn't like about yourself, and which was just a fascinating exercise. And little things like that, they just really are so they're cathartic, and they're also just paradigm shifting. Because then it's like, oh, also the other thing is the amazing thing when you're with people, and I find this in a lot of the other work that I'm involved in from all over the world, and I'm in these little groups, and there's maybe 500 people part of a platform from 51 countries, and I go into a small breakout group, and everybody's the same. Like everyone has the same experiences. They're in South Africa. They're in, I'm from Kenya. I'm from New Zealand. And then we get into and start talking from an emotional standpoint, and everybody has the same emotions or has very similar experiences or have. So, which is kind of nice because the whole concept of us building a community, it's kind of limitless, because if we can accept each other as emotional human beings, the possibilities are amazing.
Dan?
So what I personally discovered was that I was more. I was more than my story. I was more than my choices. I was more than any label that I had put on myself or that I allowed to be put on me. That I was everything that these other men had experienced and what I had experienced, and that we're really not, like Phil touched upon it, like we're all very much the same in many respects. Yes, we have our individuality, and that's to be cherished and celebrated. And underneath it all, we are all the same. We are all experiencing the same very human emotions and human situations. And I read somewhere that love is not the absence of anger or sadness or hate. It's actually all of those things. Love is everything. And that was the most surprising thing that I learned about myself and about other men, is that we are all love. And that sounds hippie and psychedelic, but that's really the truth that I discovered. And because I had a life of, especially at that time, super vulnerable time in my life when I went to my first retreat, and even the first group that I had, it was like a week after I got separated from somebody who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Thank God that that's not the case. I wish her well, but I've entered into a beautiful relationship now with somebody who sees me for who I am because I allow that. But I'm more than those things that I was telling myself. I'm more than the guy who was addicted to porn. I'm more than the guy who cheated on his wife. I'm more than the guy who drank too much or did too many drugs. I'm more than the person who hurt those people. I'm that, and I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm generous, I show up, I'm brave, I'm strong. And that's really what it is. I'm love, and I'm all of those things, because love is all of those things. So that was the most surprising thing. And, I've done tons of psychedelic journeys where I was like, yeah, I'm love, yeah. I never felt it in that way. Mm-hmm. And I still feel it. I'm able to tap into that. So that's the most surprising thing.
Anybody who's listened to the show knows that love is one of my favorite things to talk about. I talk about it all the time on the show. And just this past week, I had I don't want to call it a revelation. That sounds a bit too grand, but I've had a shift in how I think about it. Because as I've said before, that when I learned to love me, that's when I learned to love everything and everyone, that I developed my theory of love, which is you are automatically entitled to my unconditional love merely because you are a being on this planet. And I may not like you, I may not like the things you do, but I love you. And I'm required to love you. And I came to the conclusion just this past week that love is not for me, love is not necessarily an emotion or a feeling. I can feel love and it can be an emotion, but more than that, for me of late, it is an intention and a practice that I have an intent to love and I have a practice of love. And that if you see me and experience love, it's not because I am feeling love, but because it's an intentional practice. And I don't know, I just, it's sort of ancillary to what you were saying, but I just wanted to get that out there. Have that on record. That you can mark your calendar. This was the week that I shifted my attitude towards love. How can I phrase this? If there were one thing that you could tell every guy, what would it be?
You're not in it alone.
Fuck, man. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Hey.
Sometimes going first has its advantages.
It's true.
That's what I was waiting
this time. I think it's one of the hardest pieces for men to understand and to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Because all evidence gives them a contrary message.
Well, I want to just bounce back to your previous statement, Vitor, about love. And I think, my tremendous interest in end-of-life work really was inspired by love. Mm-hmm. And it is ultimately the most loving experience that you can have. And you talk about unconditional love, and it's not really quantifiable because it just is. Mm-hmm. And it's a honor to be in that position to do that work. And that's really, I've now studied with a number of great teachers, and some of them Buddhists, and it's the whole process is just holding space for people and giving them love at their most vulnerable time, and you get the love back. And I've had that experience personally with the work I've done, and it's amazing and so enriching. Mm-hmm. And it's different also than, as you said, there's other kinds of love. But as far as deep unconditional love, people have it with pets. People have it with people. It's just, for me, that's really, that's where it really touches me very deeply. And that was my motivation for getting involved in this work. So,
and that's what you would want guys to know, right? What, Tom?
You having an end-of-life experience, Tom?
I have to sign off.
Oh, all right. Well, Tom, thanks for joining us. We're going to continue the conversation, but
and we'll now talk about you.
Yeah.
We will have
so I can always find out.
Yeah. We will have your bio and your contact information in the show notes. So if folks want to get in touch with you, they'll know how.
Awesome.
I am so grateful to you for being here.
And I appreciate you for giving us this platform to talk about all this work that we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Tom,
Ciao.
be well. Have a nice evening.
You too.
All right, let's rake him over the coals.
Fucking Tom.
Thought he would never leave. Jesus.
Okay, next. Dan, you have to leave next because I'm not leaving first.
I cleared my schedule to be here.
No, but seriously. So, was what would you want every guy to know? And so, Phil, you went into the end of life and the unconditional love. Is that what you would want every guy to know, that there is love out there for them?
I think number one, everything is okay. Everything is accepted, and nothing is bad. If somebody like, I feel that I see people and I see who they are, and I'm kind of beyond judgment at this point in my life. I respect and honor people for who they are. And when and do I want to tell them about love? Well, I won't even go into that because I'm not going to go back to death again. But, the Buddhist principle of having a healthy relationship with death is that you honor and appreciate every second of every day that you're alive and not take anything for granted. And I think that's so important, because even this time that we have together, it's like a gift to be able to spend time with you guys. And I think that's just important. And I think about it all the time. It's like, when you're like sitting on your ass because you're tired, and it's like, or I could go hiking, or I could read a book, or I could do this, or call my kids, or do something. I mean, it's very enriching to me. So if I was telling, I will try not to go into the death conversation because I'm obsessed, but
that's another podcast.
Yes, that's another podcast, which I'm happy to do and bring some of my people. But
and a New Yorker obsessed with death. Whoever would have imagined?
Can you imagine? I have a healthy relationship. That's all. Okay. But I think that's really the most important thing. Like, everything is okay and everything can be said, and there is no judgment, because we're just people and we're all in the same journey to survive and be happy and lead our lives in the best way we can. So, come, be seen, be accepted, and be a part of a community. That's the bottom line.
Dan?
So I think really foundational is that idea of you are not alone. That was something that I really struggled with. I thought that I was the worst person in the world, that the things that I did were evil, horrifying, that I didn't deserve to live anymore because of what I did and the pain that I caused. And what I found, and what I want to share with every man that's out there, is that everything deserves to be heard. You deserve to be seen, and that you're not alone, and that you deserve love, and that you deserve connection. And by accepting and receiving that fundamental truth of existence, you get the opportunity to create the life that you want to live and the life that you're proud of. And that's the challenge, right? That's the ask that I'm putting out to all the men who listen, is take that risk, take that chance to come to be seen, to be accepted. Because what's on the other side of that fear of taking that step is something wilder than you could ever imagine or dream. I'm living proof of it. I almost died twice in a year. Once from my own hand, and once from a really bad car accident that was outside of my control. And I leaned into the fear, and I showed up for myself. In my life now, I'm not sitting here patting myself, oh, my life is amazing. No, I'm not here grandstanding. My life has taken directions that I never thought it would take, and it is the best. I wouldn't trade any of my past experiences, because they've led me right to where I am, and I love my life, and every man deserves to live a life that they love, and they can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Everyone knows, well, everyone who's listened to the show anyway, knows that I have two questions that I ask every guest. And since you are on the hot seat, both of you, it is both of your turn. Question number one is, and this is particularly appropriate for this crowd, is what does the word authenticity mean to you?
Authenticity means to me when I do my mindfulness work and I am comfortable in my own skin and my actions, I can honor my actions and the way I show up in the world and feel good about it and know that I've made a difference. That's authenticity to me.
Dan?
Authenticity means to me a state of being that is unapologetic and genuine and conscious. A state of knowing oneself and living to the values that you have and that you choose. And being so honest and comfortable with one's journey and oneself that you can show up even when you might stray from those values and seek support.
Beautiful. Question number two is, what's the one thing I didn't ask you that you wish I had asked you? Go ahead. Come up with a smart-ass remark, Klein. I can see you. I can see your smile.
I am not going
I was going to talk about weight loss, but then I thought, because I know the question already, because I'm an avid fan of yours.
I know you are. That's why you're here. Just kidding. You would have been here anyway.
One question that I would have liked you to ask would be, how has your life improved since finding this work?
How has your life improved since finding this work?
In every way. And what I mean by that is that I love myself. I have people who I can call at 4 a.m., 2 of which are on this call or on this podcast. And people who I get to choose and who love me for me and who I get to love for them, for who they are, who give me the honor, who do me the honor of allowing me to see them for who they are and to show up for them in all aspects. I'm living my purpose. I'm creating and serving people using the gifts that I've been given so selflessly by other organizations and other men. I get to turn around and give that to other people and have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. I am in a relationship that I never even dreamed was possible, a romantic relationship. And it's not always perfect. Like, that's the coolest thing. It's like not butterflies and rainbows always. It's challenging and it's real and it's gritty and there's fear and there's sadness and it's raw. But it's authentic. And I'm living a life that I never even dreamed I could live. I never thought I would deserve it. And because of this work, I realized not only do I deserve it, but I have the power and the strength to create it because I'm not doing it alone.
Beautiful. Thank you. Mr. Gaynor, what question did I not ask you that you wish I had asked you?
Discomfort comes to mind. Uncomfortable situations. And I don't know how I would phrase the question, but that's what's in my head, because that's
Is it
kind of one of
around? Is it around the concept of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, comfort with discomfort?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And that would be the only question, because it's something I'm struggling with. So if you had asked me, then I would have had to go into it. and I'm struggling because there are certain things, and I think that I'm light years from where I was 3 years ago. And I'm very happy and I'm very happy where I am. And I love doing the work and learning and growing. But I know I have a lot of work to do. And the uncomfortable things in life I find are the biggest growth things,
Mm-hmm.
and really the path to happiness. And so, yeah, that's what I would hope that you'd ask me, and hopefully you won't ask me now.
Well, so now I want to ask you, because you just sort of told us why it's important to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where your resistance lies.
I'm comfortable being uncomfortable in most situations. My resistance lies in particular relationships, avoiding anticipated confrontations that I don't want to deal with. And that is the truth.
And I love that you gave me an authentic answer.
It's the truth. It's right from my heart. That's where I'm talking from.
Well, I can see
we can
by
go into it at another time.
We could.
I think Jordan just pulled the car up.
Yeah. I can see by the clock on the wall that we are coming to the end of our time together. However, before we do that, I just want to give you guys one last opportunity. If there's anything else that you need to say to feel complete around having been here today.
Well, I feel completely complete, and it's such an honor to spend the time with all you men. But Ator, every interaction I have with you is always a gift, and I tell you that every time I speak to you. And I appreciate you giving us this space, and I honor you for that, and also giving us your platform.
Well, and the thing that you forgot to say is what I often hear you tell people, that I am your favorite person in the world.
That's true. I'm glad you said it.
Which can't be true as the father of 4 and married and everything else.
Oh, no, it's true.
But
it's true. It's absolutely true. Because, you're such a kind, compassionate person, and you see everybody individually as who they are, and you're very intentional about understanding what's going on for them as individuals. And I think that's very special. And I think you also showed up for me. You were the initial person who showed up for me in this work. And that's another notch on the showing up learning curve. And that's amazing. So, and I say that to you, and I mean it. And, it's an honor to be your friend.
Oh, well,
so
right back at
that's
you.
True.
Was that retreat that you talked about earlier, was that the first time that you and I met in person?
Yes.
Yeah, thought so.
At Menla.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I was there too.
Danny, I'm
feeling left out.
Actually, I drove you back to New York. That's how we actually met.
You did, yeah.
So fuck you.
Dan, anything to say to feel complete?
First, I am humbled and honored to be here. Ator, thank you. I know how near and dear this podcast is to your heart, and the fact that you invited me and us in to share space with you. It's just a huge moment in my life. So thank you. Something that I will remember forever. And I would encourage any man who listens to check out Authentic Men, to check out Authenticity Road. We are not the only name in town, nor do we want to be. However, if you feel like connecting with really authentic people, I know that those two platforms are the best place to go for that.
And what's the URL for guys who want to check you out?
Yeah, it's AuthenticMen.com without the I. So it's AUTHENTCMEN.com.
Right.
And I just want to say something else also. If people want to understand the journey of men's work before they dive in, they should listen to Authenticity Road and some of you. I've listened to every single one of your podcasts, and I feel like, and I've told you this, I feel like you're sitting in my living room with your guests, and it's such an incredible experience. And you can really understand what it's all about, and you can feel it, and you have amazing guests, and you treat everybody beautifully, and you get into the weeds, if you will. So,
you're going to have a weird moment when you listen to this podcast, because you're going to be in your living room listening to yourself.
I hate listening to myself. I'll skip right over this episode.
Tor, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Brother.
Really.
Yeah. Well, I was actually about to get to that with you and say thank you both. And I feel bad that Tom's not here to hear this. But thank you, and Tom. But thank you, Dan Klein and Philip Gaynor, for being here. You are two of the dearest people in my world. I just adore you beyond words. I cannot express the degree of gratitude that I have to the two of you for spending this time with me and sharing your stories and your journeys and this exciting new venture that you've started. I am blessed to have had you here. So my utmost gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that being said, it is time to throw the bags back in the jalopy and head back out onto the Authenticity Road. So on behalf of the show, I am Tor, and until we meet again, please be authentic. Goodbye, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope what you've heard will help you on the road to your personal authenticity.
Visit us at www.authenticityroad.online.